I'm going to do a few examples of one-step equations. These are mostly multiplicative or division of some type. I do have one that's adding, so we're going to see that here in number 3. But let's start with number 1. Number 1, negative 5x equals 30. Negative 5x basically means negative 5 times x. Okay, so that closeness between that coefficient, that negative 5, and that variable x, when you see that closeness there, it means multiplication. Okay, so you have to think, okay, what's the opposite of multiplying by negative 5? Let me put a little dot in between here so we can see that that's actually multiplication here. So what's the opposite of multiplying by negative 5? Well, the opposite would be dividing by negative 5. So if I divide this side by negative 5, I have to divide the other side by negative 5. Whatever you do to one side, you have to do the other side to maintain that balance. Think of the equal sign as a kind of like a seesaw. Okay, you have a person sitting here, person sitting here, right? They're basically sitting across from each other, kind of like on an apex of some sort, right? Sorry, it's a little bit longer here, but basically, my point is this: negative 5x is over here, and 30 is over here. You want to maintain that balance. So whatever I do to this side, I got to do to this side as well, so to maintain that balance, to maintain that equality, that equation sign, or I should say the equal sign. Okay, so we divide both sides by negative 5. This cancels out. All we're left with is x equals, and in this case it would be negative 6. And how do we check it? We can take this solution for x, right, negative 6, plug it back in. Plug it back into your equation. See if it works. Does negative 5 times negative 6 equal 30? And you will find that it does. Okay. Number 2, 2/3 x equals 21. Again, this closeness represents a multiplication. So what is the opposite of multiplying by 2/3? Dividing by 2/3. So we're going to divide this side by 2/3. Divide this side by 2/3. And then you'll get x equals 21 divided by 2/3. Now, how do we divide fractions? Okay, we know we keep, change, flip. So it's going to be x equals 21. We put that over 1 because it's a whole number, right? You can't just, leave it as it is. So we're going to keep 21 over 1. Change this to multiplication. I should use the dot instead, sorry. And then we're going to flip that. Keep, change, flip. So this goes, the denominator becomes the numerator. The numerator becomes the denominator. You're going to flip that. So 3 over 2. That becomes 63 over 2. And then you're going to change this improper fraction to a mixed number. 2 goes into 63, 31 times at least? 31.5 or 31.5. So 31.5. And that's going to be your answer for x. So x equals 31.5. Or 31.5. Okay? And how do we check that? We can just plug that back in here. And then you'll find out that that works. Okay? Number 3, here's the one that's not multiplication. This is, we're adding a negative 3. So what's the opposite of adding a negative 3? How do I get this to where we just have x equals our answer? How do I isolate the variable? How do I get that by itself? I got to get rid of this thing, right? So we got to get rid of this thing here. So how do we get rid of a minus 3 or a negative 3? You add a 3, right? So if I add a 3 or add a positive 3, that's going to cancel that out. So if I add 3 to this side, I got to add 3 to the other side as well. And as you know, you're left with x there. And as you know as well, that negative 8 plus 3, you don't really add those. Remember, this is negative 8 on the number line. It's, to kind of give you a visual. Let me see if I can go down here. To give you a visual, because some people forget, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Negative 8's right here, right? So if you're adding 3, right? Think about it. We're at negative 8, and we got to add 3. Basically, what you're going to end up doing is you're going to go to the right 3 places. 1, 2, 3. You're adding 3. Okay, and where do you end up? You end up at -7, -6, -5. You end up at -5. And that's going to be your answer for x here in this situation. So this is -5. So -5 is your answer. Okay? And again, you can check it, plug it back in, see if it works. -3 plus -5 does equal -8. Number 4. What's the opposite of multiplying by -4? Well, the opposite of multiplying by -4 is dividing by -4. All right, if I divide this by -4, this is going to cancel each other out. Okay, it's a little bit different than adding a 3. Do you see how the signs change here? The signs change because we want to get rid of that. We want it to be 0, right? Well, when you divide by -4, you don't make it 0, but you make it 1. 1 times x is just x. That stays the same. That does not change. So it's slightly different. I know some people are like, this is a little confusing because you change the sign here, but you don't change the sign here. Well, yeah, I understand that, but the whole point is this. You want to get rid of it. So mathematically, to get rid of a -3 is to add 3. Mathematically, to get rid of multiplying by -4, you got to divide by -4 because the signs are the same. It's going to be positive, right? If you had divided this by, let's say, +4, you'll get a -1, right? And -1 times x is -x, so this becomes a negative number, which becomes a problem later. And then you'd have to change the signs of both, and it's a little complicated. Basically, you want to get this to where it's just x left over. So if I divide this by -4, I divide the other side by -4, and I should get my answer. Okay. Now this is a little bit complicated. -18 divided by -4 is going to end up being a decimal. You can change it to an improper fraction. I'm just going to find the decimal version. So 18 negative divided by 4, which is also negative, equals positive 4.5. Or 4 5/10. In this case, it'll be 4 1/2, basically, is what's going to end up being. You can plug that back in here, see if it works. Let's go ahead and check that out. So 4 negative times, so -4 times 4.5 equals -18. Sure enough, it works. All right, number 5. What's the opposite of multiplying by 3.1? We want to divide both sides by 3.1. So it divides both sides by 3.1. You get x on the left-hand side, and then you get 5 on this right-hand side. And 6, this is the interesting one here. I totally made this up, and you'll see why. Sometimes I don't even know what the answer is. I just do it. I just plug some stuff in and see what happens. Okay. So the opposite of multiplying by -4 is dividing by -4. All right. So if I divide both sides by -4, I might get something kind of interesting here. So x equals 5/8 divided by -4. Well, how in the world do I divide by -4? Well, you're going to do the same thing as you did with this whole number that we had earlier. Like, if you remember over here, 21 over 1, right? So we're going to do the same thing here. So x equals 5/8 divided by -4 over 1. We're going to do the same thing as we did here. We're going to keep, change, flip, right? So we're going to keep the first fraction, or the keep the first number, if you will, and then change that multiplication, and then flip the second one. So we're going to keep 5/8, change that to multiplication. This time I'm going to use the big dot instead. And then we're going to flip, right? Find the reciprocal of -4 over 1, which is 1 over -4. So that's the reciprocal. So we multiply it straight across. X equals 5 over -32. So 5 over -32, which is basically just -5 over 32, which is the same thing. Okay, but basically that's going to be your answer for this one. You can't simplify it. And that's it. So those are just basically 6 examples of one-step equations. Hopefully I've helped. Let me know your comments down below. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to clarify on anything that I've shared. God bless.